Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Very God Boss Live webinar. We are so excited to have you all join us. We're going to give folks a few seconds to connect. And while we're waiting, we'd love to know where everyone's tuning in from today. You'll see on the right side of your screen, there's a chat box. So if you feel comfortable doing so, please feel free to send us a message in the chat saying hey and letting us know where you're joining from. Okay, so we have folks from quite a few different places. I'm seeing Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Colorado, Ethiopia. Very cool. And yeah, lots of different places. Massachusetts. Welcome, California, Connecticut, Florida, Ohio, New York. Love to see it. Really great representation across the US and across the world. Wonderful. So we will go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Valentina Lanisi. I'm a senior account manager at the Muse and Fairy God Boss. Before we get started, I do have a few quick housekeeping announcements. So just as a heads up, this session will be recorded and shared via email with all registrants. During the discussion, we would actually love to hear from you all. The most engaging webinars are always the ones where folks are chiming in with their thoughts and their reflections and asking questions. So we strongly encourage that you use the stage chat on the right side of your screen to send messages, comments, and the Q&A tab to send questions to the panelists. I'm now excited to kick off today's event, Supporting Women in Leadership Strategies from TruGreen's Experts, sponsored by TruGreen. For those of you who don't know, Fairy God Boss is the largest online community for women. Millions of women visit Fairy God Boss for career connections, jobs, community, advice, and hard to find intel about what it's like to actually work at a company and how it treats women, and virtual events like this. We are thrilled today to be joined by two leaders at TruGreen. We have Jessica Manucy and Alyssa Puketza. We would love to hear from you both. If you could take a minute to just introduce yourselves, that would be great. We'd love to know a little bit more about what's going on in your life personally, professionally, and what you do in your role today at TruGreen. Jessica, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Manucy. I am the Senior Director of Talent Acquisition for TruGreen. I have been in HR and talent acquisition for about 20 years, with TruGreen for a little over 4 years. I currently live in Ponte Vedra, Florida, but I've lived in a bunch of different places. I live here with my husband and my 3 kids, 15, 14, and 12, 2 girls and a little boy. They keep me very, very busy, as you can imagine, with all of their fun activities and basically, like to spend time cooking, traveling, and watching my kids do what they love. So it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Love it. And Alyssa?
Perfect. So hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Puketza, and I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at TruGreen. So I have been at TruGreen for a little over a year and a half now. And while I did not originally start as the Chief Marketing Officer, I have been for about 10 months. I really have been focusing on transformational growth here at the organization and have been building a marketing team pretty much from the ground up. In my personal time, I do have 2 small little boys. So I spend a lot of time at home being mom, and in our spare time, we like to go camping. So we RV a lot and just enjoy traveling around the United States.
Amazing. That sounds like such an incredible way to spend time with the family. Love that. Well, thank you all again for tuning in. As I mentioned, I'm super excited about today's discussion. I would like to remind everybody that we will be answering questions that come directly from all of you. So please submit your questions on the Q&A tab on the right of your screen. We will do our best to respond to as many as we can, and we want this to be as interactive as possible. So today we know that women make up 29% of C-suite positions, which compares to just 17% in 2015, according to McKinsey Company research. While there's been an improvement regarding the number of women at the leadership level over the last decade, there's still so much work that needs to be done before leadership teams reach gender parity. I'd really love to start today's conversation off by learning more about how TruGreen is supporting women in leadership and some of the resources they need to succeed in these positions. So the first question that I'd like to kick off with is just how is TruGreen supporting, advocating for, and advancing women in the workplace, specifically in leadership roles?
So I'll jump in and start answering this first. So when I started a year and a half ago, there was no woman in leadership from an executive perspective. Fast forward to today, it's about 33%. So a third of the executive team is made up of women. I think one of the great things about the team that I am building, it is majority women. The majority of the women on my team also have young children. So as we think about fostering leadership and advocating for women, what I instill across my team and try to instill across the organization is about support and flexibility. So as you think about when you have small kids, just being able to understand that flexibility matters and your workday does not always need to look exactly the same as your coworker. So making sure that I'm instilling that not only to my team, but across the entire organization. And what I will say is it's completely accepted almost everywhere across the organization, which has been a nice change of pace.
Yeah, that's incredible, right? I love that idea of really cultivating that support and flexibility from the ground up. And it's so phenomenal that TruGreen was able to kind of usher in this change and create that representation in executive leadership so quickly in your time with the organization. Jessica, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think from a talent acquisition perspective, definitely we like to source women. We always want to interview a diverse slate of candidates, right? Like we want to make sure that we have a lot of diversity in who we're interviewing, and definitely had a greater focus over the last few years since I've been here on development as well. So making sure that we're promoting women, that we're looking at when we're succession planning, who's available, and is there, like, who's the best talent, and making sure people can get the development they need to get there.
So it sounds like when it comes to talent attraction, diversity, both in the initial piece of who you're looking to hire, it comes into play, as well as once they're at the organization, how can they grow and develop?
Absolutely. Yeah. Both of those things I think are equally as important.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I guess the next question would just be, how has your day-to-day work changed since you went into leadership? Can you talk a little bit about your overall approach to work and supporting your team, especially women on your team? I know you both spoke at an organizational level, but would love to know a little bit more in your day-to-day, kind of how are you making that happen? Jessica, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's always my goal to develop my team to eventually take my role if they want it, right? So that's always my thought is, understanding each person's goals, giving them the tools that they need to be successful, and helping them to get there, removing roadblocks, things that get in their way, giving them those opportunities to give presentations or lead projects, different things that will give them that leadership experience to hopefully get them, in a place where they're ready to take on that next role.
Wonderful. And Alyssa, what are your thoughts on this?
So what I would say is, as I stepped into a leadership position, I think the hardest thing for me was going from doing to enabling. And that has been one of my biggest hurdles, I would say, as I continue to drive and build an organization and building a marketing team. So with all of that, I try my best to just model what's possible. While I need to learn not to do as much to continue to grow as a leader, I want my team to feel and see exactly what is possible. Working hard, balancing being a mother of young children and being a woman, that is critical. And at the end of the day, just not being afraid of failure. Like, you are growing if you're pushing yourself to the point of being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because I think both of you have touched upon some key thoughts when it comes to really thinking critically about how to provide that flexibility and support to women in the workplace, right? It's like equipping your team with the resources, the support they need to grow, while also understanding that there's an element of having to, you can't be what you can't see, right? And so, Alyssa, I love that you model that every day in the work that you do with your team. That's so wonderful. I guess in that same vein, I'd love to know a little bit more about how TruGreen makes sure that women are represented in leadership roles across the board. I think, Alyssa, you had mentioned that, since joining the organization now, I believe you mentioned 1/3 of the executive leadership team identifies as women, and women of all different aspects of their life journeys, right? So women with families. Can you talk a little bit about how this decision or how this strategy was kind of put in place to create that representation?
Jessica, you want to take that one first?
I will. That's something, since I came in, we were really kind of narrowly focused in using just one place to put all of our roles, right? Like we were just kind of putting all of our eggs in I won't say the Indeed basket. We are a very male focused industry. I mean, if you think about what we do, it is primarily a lot of men in our workplace. I mean, there's a lot of people in sales, and a lot of the people that do the actual work out on the lawns are men. It's kind of who we attract typically. So part of our talent acquisition strategy was, how do we get these roles in front of more women? How do we get them in front of more diverse candidates? How do we get them, out there so that we're not just, always attracting the same people? So it's through our partnership with Fairy God Boss, making sure that we're getting the roles out there in front of the right people. Also, trying to post, different things on LinkedIn, and, things about what we're doing, about our culture, showing different people, even, on our career site. We just completely redid our career site about a year ago, and making sure that we're not just having the pictures of the men on the lawn, right? But like that we're showing a diverse workforce, and that there are women that are here, and hopefully when they come in to talk to us, and when they interview with us, they see that there's more diversity here, and I think that attracts even more women to want to come over.
And just to build on what Jessica said, like when we think about the imagery that we're getting from a marketing perspective and how we're representing who services our customers' lawns, like we make sure that we have a good mix of male and female, that it shouldn't just be a male dominated industry. And just making sure that we also have the right tools in order to support, no matter if you're a man or a female, doing the work that needs to get done. So whether or not we're investing in additional tools and machinery, just to kind of make sure everyone just has the right tools overall.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept, right? Like you can't be what you can't see. So the intentionality of you all, both in talent attraction perspective, in terms of the types of folks who you feature and uplifting, like the women in the workplace, as well as, I think, as you mentioned, Jessica, kind of really thinking about where are there communities of folks who might not have heard of us or might associate us with being a male dominated company, organization, and really trying to share and kind of spread the message that that's not the case and you can grow, right? And so the partnership with Fairy God Boss, I think, is an excellent example of doing that, right? And conversations like these, where we get to hear a little bit more about both of your experiences. With that being said, I think we can all acknowledge that, there are different types of leadership roles and different paths to leadership. It sounds like, Alyssa, you've been in your role now as a chief marketing officer for about 10 months, I think you had mentioned. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with the different types of leadership roles and paths that there are at TruGreen, both from your own personal experience and also from the folks that you're looking to connect with and attract?
So there is definitely a lot of different paths to leadership within our organization. While we've been around for over 50 years, we're very startup in a lot of places, which gives people a lot of opportunity for growth. So if you think about the fact that I've built my team from the ground up over the past 18 months, I started with one set of individuals. And what I did was I really thought about, what is the growth path? How do I make sure that I'm not only hiring people and the people we need today, but then giving them the path for growth and being able to take on more from a leadership perspective. So my entire philosophy was hiring out a flatter organization. So as people begin to skill up and look for additional responsibilities, then I have the ability to promote and layer in the right set of people as we become more sophisticated as an organization, as a marketing organization. And I've seen that across the board. We have changed so dramatically in the past, I would say 2 years, if not less than that, that has allowed for so much more opportunity for everyone within our organization.
Yeah, I love that. Being able to also have that startup mentality at an organization that has been around for 50 years is also like a really interesting mix, right? That's wonderful. And Jessica, what are your thoughts on this?
We do love to promote from within, right? So since, there's a lot of people that have kind of grown up in our business or, that have been here the whole 50 years. I mean, I can think of a couple of people that have been here a really long
There's
time.
a lot.
Yeah, there are. But I think we like to give people the opportunity, like Alyssa said, it's almost like startup-esque where you can, if you are interested in something, I mean, we do, calibrate our talent every year and we look at, who's on the team and who are your high potentials and who, what are they interested in? Like having those conversations as well, not just like, where do I think you fit, but like, where do you think you fit? And is there something else that you're interested in? And maybe it's not promoting, in my org, but like, I want to get you to where you want to be. I know it's not a huge stretch, but I've had a lot of people from my team promote into human resource roles, which, I mean, it's still kind of under the same umbrella, but, being in HR is a little bit of a different skill than being in TA. I've also, received people on my team from sales and from admin and from, other places. So, I think that's always really kind of cool too, to get people from other places and, hopefully, they enjoy what they're doing. And, if they want to continue to grow with TruGreen, then we'll hopefully get a path for them. So.
Yeah, that's such an interesting concept, right? I think something so often people don't necessarily understand about an organization when they join off, at the front end is really how important that culture of promoting from within is and that professional development. It sounds like this is sort of the epicenter of TruGreen's culture when it comes to having these conversations, allowing people to have access and exposure to different aspects of the business and kind of keeping your talent, even if it's in a different type of team or department. That can't be understated enough. I feel like that's such a really, really amazing aspect of TruGreen's culture. In the same vein of trying to uplift and help women into leadership roles, we know that there's a lot of information about what you should and you shouldn't do and what you should say and how you should act and what you should wear, which can be very confusing. What would you say is your number one piece of advice for other women who are moving into or wanting to move into leadership?
I would say don't listen to what other people are telling you. Like if someone says you can't do that, that'll be too hard, or you won't like that, or like yourself better than anyone else. So I would say just don't listen. Like I'm always like, okay, thanks for the advice. Like only you know what you're capable of and you know what you want to do. So I always say just go for it. Like I think people have the best of intentions when they try to tell you something. I kind of feel the same way. Like when I was having my kids, people would give me all this advice that was maybe not solicited, but at the end of the day, you have to do what works for you and your family, right? And I think it's the same with your career. Like you can take everybody's advice and be like, okay, thank you. But at the end of the day, you're the one who needs to own that, I would say. So that, and then another one I would say is be authentic. I wouldn't listen to people telling you have to dress a certain way or look a certain way or do, don't talk in meetings or don't, there's a lot of things that get told to us, but I just think you can never go wrong if you're just authentic. I mean, if you're just yourself, people typically will love you. Maybe some people, maybe you're not everybody's cup of tea. That's fine. Like, but you'll find your people, right? And I think that people respond to authenticity, and you don't have to be anybody but yourself. So those would be my two things.
I think those two things definitely go hand in hand, right? It's not necessarily listening to what other people have to say, and also holding space to be your true authentic self. I think are definitely key tenets. What about you, Alyssa? What are your thoughts on this?
So there's a few things that I have lived by throughout my entire career. So number one, don't wait for something to be perfect. The way I think of it is like men don't wait until something's perfect. A good example is when you're applying for new jobs or new roles. Men apply at a higher rate than women because women read and they want to make sure that they're a perfect fit before they apply. Like don't do that. I think say yes and then just figure it out. Growth really happens when you're slightly uncomfortable. So just continuing to push yourself and be okay with being uncomfortable. And the other thing is don't be afraid to fail. I tell my team this constantly. And when they mess up, I tell them not to say sorry because they're learning. Like I know everything that I know today because of how many times I have messed up. And the biggest thing is you fail and then what are you going to learn from it and how is it going to make you a better marketer, a better employee, a better coworker, a better anything. You only learn when you're failing from my perspective.
Yeah, there's a really I forgot who says it, but it's like failing forward, right? This concept of, every failure is not a step backwards, but really just a step in the right direction and a learning experience. So I absolutely can 100% vouch for that. And to your point, we know based on industry research that time and time again, women will self-cancel, right? When it comes to opportunities, whether they're, internal promotions or a different job, if we don't meet 10 out of 10 of the criteria, we're just like, okay, well, I'm not qualified for this, right? And so not being the person to, cancel yourself out, I think is so critical when it comes to advancing your career as a woman, irrespective of the industry or organization. So that's wonderful. We've talked a bit about a lot of TruGreen's, I would say like, organic kind of culture focused things that help women in the workplace in terms of advancing their careers, whether it be conversations with your team about how to grow and develop. One of the things that we got a question about from the audience is, are there any like formal, types of resources and programs that TruGreen offers? So are there employee resource groups, for example, or leadership development programs specifically for women at TruGreen? And either of you can take the question.
We do not have any of those things developed right now. Definitely things on the roadmap for sure. Generally, we were talking about this earlier. I've never been told no to any kind of, development opportunity that I want to take for myself. But I think at this point, our team, it's kind of in their hands, right? Like when I'm talking to my team about, where they want to go and what they want to do, I will always be supportive of, if they want to take a class, if they want to, go to a conference, whatever they want to do, whatever that looks like for them. I think everyone kind of has their own path. But we kind of put it on them to tell us, or at least I do, to tell me like what is it that they, where they want to go. So, and what's going to help get them there. And I'm there to help guide them, but we don't have any real formal programs at this point, but definitely things we've talked about for sure. So there may be some coming from the HR perspective.
What I will say is there's definitely a culture of supporting. So people on my team come to me every day and they're like, hey, I saw this. I want to invest in this. I want to take this course. I think a lot of what's in place today is just this culture of wanting to learn and wanting to evolve. And while we don't have a formal program, we do have a culture that absolutely supports this. Some more in certain places and in certain departments than others, but it's definitely something that has been infused. And I think a lot of what we try to do is support real life. So we make sure that we're driving flexibility. So while a lot of our organization is in the office 4 days a week, and we're centralized around that location, we do have flexibility. So when someone on my team says, "Hey, my daughter has a swim meet at 3 o'clock," then why aren't you there? So just making sure that people are just being realistic about real life and supporting people's needs.
Yeah, what's so interesting is that a lot of these, I would say, like structured types of inclusive programming, right? Like employee resource groups and these, sort of development programs stemmed from, I would say, the organization and the people working at the organization saying, hey, we need this. This is missing. It sounds like you all, from the ground up, have really been intentional about having those sorts of things, right? Providing that professional development, providing that flexibility, providing that support in a way where it almost makes sense why it hasn't been something that has been developed. But it also sounds like from Jessica's insights that, if you've never been told no, Jessica, then maybe it's just, a motivated employee's, next passion project to set up an ERG. So perhaps that'll be different, even a couple months from now, who knows? In the same vein, talking about professional development programming and employee resource groups, a lot of folks are trying to understand how organizations show up for women outside of, their compensation and the like. And so we often have folks who are interested in understanding what, benefits and offerings companies have to support women. So I would love to know a little bit from both of you. What are some of your favorite benefits, programming, or policies that you love at TruGreen?
I have the benefit of working from home. I'm a little different than Alyssa. I'm a remote employee, and my entire team is remote. So I know that's kind of unique to the talent acquisition group at TruGreen. We are a very large part of the HR org, but so having that flexibility with working from home is really amazing, especially if you have kids and you're able to be there. Just being here, I get to see my kids all the time, even if I don't get to interact with them, which is kind of amazing. We also do flexible holidays. So we're not like tied to, you get, these certain X holidays off. You can take off a couple holidays that are important to you. We have personal days, which is great. Benefits are, affordable, like from a medical standpoint. Most of the people that work here are hourly employees, so we try to make things very affordable for people. We do have a good 401k match, but that's probably. Did I leave anything out, Alyssa?
I think the biggest thing is flexibility. I think that is the biggest benefit that we offer, whether or not you're remote or in the office. We just make sure to support whatever your life needs.
Yeah, I think, as a mom myself, I think the flexibility piece can't be understated, enough, or stated enough. I feel like there is so much talk about being flexible, but it looks different in different places. And it sounds like truly you all offer that, even, regardless of where you are kind of in the business, and it looks different for different people, right? With Alyssa, you're mentioning of, if somebody has, a kid's event, being able to go to that event is really amazing, right? And not having to take necessarily time off to do that. I also loved the fact, the 401k match. I think financial compensation is also really, can't be, championed enough in terms of providing that flexibility and support. So it's great that TruGreen offers that. In the same sort of vein, how does TruGreen gather feedback from its women and employees to ensure that, the benefits that you all have and the programs that you have are meeting the needs of your employees?
We actually do a yearly Voice of the Associate survey. And actually this year we're going to start having more increased frequency of these surveys. And definitely a lot of the questions on there are around our benefits. And Alyssa, do you want to?
Yeah, so there's a few things that are being done on the HR side, which is actually a crossover across our entire business. So we are in the process of implementing a tool called Qualtrics. And we're not only using that for the customer experience and our digital experience, but also in our employee experience. So there's a lot of work that is being done across the organization to gather the insights and then being able to action upon them. So how do we make the customer experience better? What are we learning? What are people saying? How do we improve upon that? From a website experience, what's working and not working on our website? Where are their friction points? And then that also then translates into the employee experience. So there's a ton of work that's being put in place because that's how we're going to grow our organization. So happy employees and a really positive customer employee experience relates and translates directly to a better customer experience as well. So whether or not you're in the corporate office or in the field and you're servicing lawns, we want to make sure that we have the right programs and the right support in place, no matter where you are. So within that, this also then empowers us and enables us to really take action. And that's the biggest thing. Like, we have been an organization that has been for a long time stuck on, I know all these things, but then no one took action. We're now developing all of the plans in order to really take action. And that's the biggest piece with all of this.
Yeah, that's such a reassuring thing to hear that TruGreen is really walking the walk and talking the talk when it comes to actually doing stuff. Because so often at any organization, right, even if they take the step of offering a survey, it doesn't necessarily always translate into actually like, what are we doing with this information, right? So it's so wonderful to hear, Alyssa, that, you know, the tools that you all are using to service your clients and be a better business and carry the business forward are those same tools that you're looking to leverage internally to help build your organization. You know, keeping your people front and top of mind. I think that's amazing. We got this question in the community channel, but also it's something that was on the agenda, so it's great and serendipitous. The next question is, what advice would you give to others to be a better ally to women in the workplace and also to lift women up alongside you?
So I'll jump in first here. So the biggest thing I always say to my team is, don't be afraid to spotlight other people. As I've been building the culture of my team and building the team from the ground up, I make it very clear that we can't have egos here, that we are all for the betterment and working together as a team, but also uplifting and empowering each other as a team. Whether or not you are male or female or anything else, making sure that everyone is working together, that it is extremely collaborative, and we are in it together for a shared outcome. One of our pillars as an organization is one team together. So making sure that we're living that and breathing that in every single thing that we do.
That's wonderful. And Jessica, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say be willing to advocate for other women that are maybe not in the same room or at the same table that you're at. Always be, giving other people, like, brag about your colleagues, I guess. Brag about people that, you work alongside, that maybe you've been on a project with. And with my team, I mean, anytime I get kudos emails about people on my team, I will forward those to our CHRO. Like, let me brag about this person for a second, look at what this awesome work that they're doing. Or, I always tell my team, if you don't tell people what you're doing, they don't know, right? So just making sure that we're all kind of like advocating for each other and talking about the good work that we're doing. It is very much a team effort. But I want to know also that, someone, if Alyssa's in a boardroom, that she's going to say good things about me, and I will always say good things about her. And I think as women, that's really, really important, just to make sure that we're building each other up when others are not around,
Love it. Yes, that's definitely the way to go, right? I think the key tenets of what you both shared about, uplifting others, working together, one team, kind of one dream, and this idea of really sharing and championing what folks are doing and creating visibility to that, I think is so important and so deeply important, specifically for women who often do a lot of that work, silent work, right? And aren't getting the visibility that they necessarily should have when they're doing some really interesting things that carry the business forward. Now we have reached the point in the conversation where we are going to take a few questions from the audience. We have a question that came in where someone asked, and we talked about this a little bit, but maybe not as like, I think directly, what leadership qualities do you think are most important for women looking to rise to executive level roles today? I know we talked a little bit about authenticity. We talked a little bit about not kind of self-canceling. Are there any other qualities that you think help women when they're looking to, get into a C-suite position that you think are useful?
So for me, I would say drive. I think that's one important quality. When you're juggling a million things, when you're trying to mentor your team and you're managing up and down and sideways and everywhere in between, you need a really, really strong drive. You need strong motivation. And as you go through your career, you realize that drive is not always something that you can teach. It's natural. So being able to tap into that and really lean into what motivates you is important.
Yeah, and along those same lines, I was going to say grit. I think resourcefulness is so important. I mean, when you get to a certain level, you're not going to get handed some kind of SOP manual or have somebody show you what to do. I mean, you have to be able to get in there and figure it out. Like, I mean, nobody's going to hold your hand. Nobody's going to tell you, sometimes you don't even get like onboarding. I remember at the beginning, I was like, I don't even know what we do here yet, but somehow I'm on like, all of these calls trying to, talk my way through it. You really just have to figure it out. So I'd say that grit will take you a long way. Being
Always say
resourceful.
yes and figure it out.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to push buttons.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because these two elements are things that I think are also so, I feel like irrespective of who you meet as a woman, oftentimes those are two pieces or elements of like a person's character that you see a lot, right? Women, holding down a household and also working a full-time job, right? And having the grit to kind of figure things out on the spot and not having a manual, I feel like is probably like the number one rule you learn when you become a mom for the, first time or however many times. And having a sense of drive and a purpose, I think is really, so critical to growing. I think in the same sort of space, we did get a question that came in, and I think we also talked about this a little bit too at the onset, but this idea of failure, right? And that failure isn't necessarily a negative thing. You can fail forward, you can learn, you can grow, and you should feel like you can fail. With this in mind, we have somebody asking, what are some of the biggest failures that you learned from, and what did you learn? And I know this is a loaded question, so you can take a few moments to think about an example.
So I've one. Hiring the wrong person. So when you go through the hiring process, if you rush just to fill the role versus hiring the right person, I think that has been one of my biggest failures in my career is realizing that it will cost you so much more to hire the wrong person and bring the wrong fit on your team versus waiting and finding the right person.
Yeah. That first fell. Sorry.
I would totally echo that. No, I hired a horrible nanny one time, even for my kids. And I was like, this is what I do for a living. How did I make such a bad choice? But it does, it sets you back. That's probably one of the hardest things. I remember one time also, I told somebody something that wasn't true, but not on purpose. It was like one of those things where I told somebody they were going to be getting a bonus, and it was like after the time of the cutoff of their bonus. This was like early on, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that, and it's going to cost it would be a couple $1,000s for the company at the time, and I remember just being so scared to tell my boss that I did this, and I was like, but I owned up to it, and I was so nervous talking to him, and he's like, so what? So just pay the bonus. Like he was so like nice about it. And I was like, I will pay it out of my bonus. Like, I don't ever want to, feel like I've told somebody the wrong thing or I've done something. I'm so much harder on myself than anyone else could be on me. But he was just very like, yeah, it's a mistake. Like obviously didn't do it on purpose. Right. And, I think just own it, right? I think anytime you mess up like that, it just makes it worse if you try to cover it up or if you try to like, not. That's one of my pet peeves with people is if they won't just like own it and just say like, yep, I messed up. What did I learn from it? And then just move on, right? And because that's what you have to do. You really you can't dwell in it too much. You can't let it paralyze you. You have to own it and move on.
Yeah, it's a great lesson to learn, I think, particularly early on in your career, but definitely at different points is, it's better to just kind of acknowledge that something happened because mistakes do happen and working together with, other folks in your organization to figure out the best path forward, right? Love both of those insights. We have another question, and this is a particularly interesting one. I think being in working as a woman at TruGreen, which you both have acknowledged is or has been historically more sort of a male dominated organization, right? We have somebody talking a little bit about their own experience being a woman of color, having experienced some discrimination at their own company, and just asking for insight how to handle sexism, even when you're in a situation where, for example, women might be more qualified or educated than their male counterparts. So how do you navigate those, conversations when you feel like there's some tension around that?
I think maybe I'm fortunate. I don't feel like I've ever been in that position where I've felt like sexism or like I couldn't say, and I think that is very fortunate because I know a lot of women do deal with that, right? It's a tough one. Like I feel like I don't know. I would probably just try to be as authentic as possible and know who my people are that I could talk to, like who you could be, who's a safe space, like who you could really, have that conversation with and tell them what's going on and get like a perspective of somebody that kind of knows what the situation is and knows the people involved. I mean, I would say if it gets to be like a really big problem, obviously you have to report it. I mean, a lot of companies have like ethics lines and things like that, and they can be investigated in a way that is anonymous, which hopefully most companies have something like that. But I will say I'm fortunate. I don't think I've ever had to really deal with a situation like that.
Yeah, and I would also argue that honestly, the best mitigating defense against some of the stuff that you're countering, I think, with sexism in the workplace really comes from what you all said. What TruGreen is doing, right, is trying to attract diverse talent into your company, being really intentional about that, elevating women into leadership roles, right, creates that diversity of thought that helps to combat a lot of what I think traditionally most folks see when it comes to sexism in the workplace. So very much the things that I think TruGreen is doing as an organization are really the things that are helping to probably, again, overcome, I would say, and prevent that from happening at your organization. So it's you're already doing the work inadvertently.
We do have a lot of courses and training on here's the right way to treat people, here's the wrong way. So every single year we make sure that we're not only compliant with educating and making sure people are empowered, but we do have an ethics hotline. We make sure that that is monitored. The executive team monitors that regularly to make sure that we are empowering and supporting our employees across the board. And to what Jessica said, like I've also been in a fortunate place that throughout most of my career, I have been uplifted and empowered in the workplace. Most of my career, I've worked for men and have been promoted by men again and again and again throughout my career. But a lot of that has to do with my drive, my grit, being authentic, and making sure that I stood up for what I believed in. My boss now, one of the first things he said to me is he wanted a sparring partner, and the joys of being from the Northeast is I got you on that one. So I've built that respect over time.
Love that. Love that. Great. Well, on that note, I think we're going to go to our next question, which is at Fairy God Boss, we have this tradition of asking our panelists the same question because we think it's always really interesting to hear their perspectives on it. But we've observed that women do not feel comfortable enough bragging or taking ownership of all the amazing things that they achieve. So we would love to hear from you both. What is an accomplishment, either personal or professional, that you're most proud of? Jessica, would you like to go first?
Sure. I decided when I was 8 months pregnant with my first child to go back and get my master's degree. And I don't know why. I think it was a personal goal of mine. I certainly didn't need it for what I was doing professionally at that point, but I kind of had this like moment of, if I don't do this right now, I'll never do it. And so it was a little inopportune timing, but started that when I was 8 months pregnant with my first child, and it took me 2 years to finish it. I worked full time the whole time, and I actually popped out another kid in the meantime as well. So when I graduated, I had an almost 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and got a 4.0. And so I say, people tell me they can't do something, or that I always say, it's not that you can't do it, it's just that you don't want to. Because I think you can just figure out a way to do anything. Like, if something's important to you, you will figure out a way to make it happen, right? So I think that just having that experience showed me a lot of like what is possible, what you can do if you have, if it's something you truly desire, you can make it happen.
Yeah, so. I can't fathom like a 4.0 working full time and 2 kids. Like, that's like Herculean. So it's
I don't know how. I don't even know. I couldn't do it now. Like, I don't. I'm like, I don't know how I don't know when I slept. I don't know, but it was important to me. So
that's amazing. That's incredible. Alyssa, what's your brag?
So I would say the past 2 years. So not only becoming a CMO, which by the way, I almost turned down because I was very nervous and didn't think that I was good enough. So again, get out of your own head. Like, it's okay to fail. But also building my team. So building a team from the ground up, going from 2 employees to 16, and building to 26 within the next 6 months. So building something literally from the ground up while being a first-time CMO, also while raising a 2-year-old and 5-year-old. So many things going on. Like, I would say the past 2 years, I am extremely, extremely proud of.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just trying to process everything you just said, like 2 to 12 to 26, and then like a 2 and a 5-year-old. That's incredible. And also so interesting that you said that you almost turned it down, right? I think like your advice now and your insight into like not canceling yourself out, brings a little bit more personal when you hear that, even somebody as accomplished as yourself could fall victim to that kind of mindset, right? It's so easy to cancel out. Awesome. Well, we have quite a few folks who joined this webinar today, and they're coming from all different types of experiences and background levels. So we always like to ask, what advice would you give to your younger self if you could go back in time? We've heard quite a bit about some of the incredible advice you all have offered in terms of authenticity and drive and grit and not canceling yourself out. Is there anything else that you think is worth sharing to folks who might be earlier on in their careers or even looking to transition to a new career?
So, yeah, what I would say is don't be scared to take risks and just enjoy the ride. Short and simple.
I was a manager right out of college, and I sometimes think about like some of the choices I made and things that I did, and I like want to go and like shake that girl and be like, you like, I think, having a lot of power at a very young age, sometimes you maybe don't say the right things. Maybe you don't speak to people in the right way. I think probably the biggest thing I learned was you get more with honey, for sure. Like, I mean, I like to use that. I grew up in the Midwest and then moved to the South. And in the South, I mean, people were like, just offended by everything that I said. And it's, you really just, I think, have to learn sometimes, in a harsh way, that you really do get more with honey. Like, it's not necessarily what you're saying, but how you're saying it. And, there's a way to get people to want to work for you. And you have to figure that out. And I think sometimes when you're just starting out in management, it's hard to know. It's hard to know how to get people to want to work for you, right? So you kind of have to think about your words, and then your delivery. I guess that's probably you get more with honey. That's it.
Yes. Love those those talking points. I'm definitely going to keep them in my back pocket because they're very valid. We do have a few more minutes before we reach the top of the hour. So we do have a couple of other questions if you all are open to sharing your thoughts on it. We, again, talked a little bit about this before. I think we touched upon it, but would love to know if you had thoughts on what your most valuable career mistake has been. I think, Alyssa, you talked about hiring the wrong person. Is there anything else you can think of that you think is really valuable in your career journey?
What I would say is not everyone is motivated or responds to the same things. So my undergrad's in psychology, and I spent a lot of time trying to understand what makes people tick. And I learned early in my career a lot about DISC, which is a personality assessment, and is my favorite by far. And I make every new person on my team take a DISC assessment, and at least twice a year we meet as a team and go over, here's how everyone is different and how everyone works different and how everyone's styles are different. And we talked a lot on this call about diversity, but it's not just diversity of what we look like, it's diversity of thought and the diversity into different ways that we work and can work together. So that is a lot of what I've learned. And by not leaning into that early in my career, realized that was a mistake. Like, you cannot talk to people or think people are going to work the same way. Certain people love a lot of organization and rigidity. Some people hate that, and it holds them back. So being able to understand those nuances and differences within people is really, really powerful. And that's how you get such an amazing team. I coach my team all the time that, like, when I hire my direct reports, I make sure I have a little bit of each personality profile, because it's going to create a much better team. And then not only on top of that is you have to learn about each other's personalities, and that's how it's going to work even better. And then if you have a manager on your team that has a certain personality, then they need to almost hire the opposite if it works out that way, because it's just going to create better cohesion. And if you haven't looked into DISC, it is my favorite by far.
I'm a big fan of DISC as well. Right. As soon as you started talking, I was like, she's speaking language. There are also a bunch of resources and stuff that you all can look at in your own time collectively to kind of get insight, because as you mentioned, Alyssa, it's great to be able to know not only the folks that you're working with, how they prefer to communicate and receive information, but also yourself, right? Sometimes that introspection is not something that we have a tendency of doing on the day-to-day. So understanding that allows you to be able to also communicate more effectively and understand how you like to receive information too is so critical. Jessica, what would you say has been your most valuable career mistake?
I think kind of along those same lines, but learning not to reflect like my own craziness onto others or have the same expectations for other people that I would have for myself. I think because there are things that I can do that I'm like capable of doing, that doesn't mean everybody's capable of doing them, right? And just because I'm a crazy person and I'm like responding to emails at midnight doesn't mean that everyone else should be responding to emails at midnight, right? People do have their own personal, like their time. And so I try to be very intentional about telling my team, what you see me do is not what I expect of you. Like that is just not, it's, you don't, just because you see me doing this, please don't feel like you have to be, responding to emails while you're at Disney World with your kids. Like it's just not, what other people, are want to do or are capable of. You really have to like keep your expectations, kind of, each person is different and you have to learn. I mean, it's really a lot of what Alyssa said, just how people work and what they're capable of, and just let them know they are free to do it the way they want to do it, and how, as long as it gets done, I don't really care like where they do it or how they do it. So
yeah, I think Alyssa had mentioned at the onset of the call that success looks different, right? And I think that's exactly what you're saying, Jessica, is that you holding people to the same standards or expectation that you hold yourself to is oftentimes like the thing that, prevents people from being able to, work better, work harder, work more intentionally. So it's great that was a mistake that, you were able to kind of do some introspection on, learn a little bit more about, and really, promote for your team. I think that is, amazing. We have one final question. You all can answer it in a couple of, words, sentences, whatever floats your boat. But how would you describe your leadership style?
So I think my answer to the last question gives you a little bit of a taste into my leadership style. So I'm all about really understanding what my employees needs. It's really hard to explain DISC without explaining DISC. But there are people on my team that are very task oriented and more slow paced. It naturally is who they are. So making sure that I'm setting them up for success and delivering assignments and expectations that is going to allow them to be super successful. But the way that I manage that person is very different than a person I would manage that hates when I tell them exactly what to do. They want to know the direction to go, but they want to figure out the way to get there. And that's okay. They're both amazing employees. They're both amazing at what they do, but how they get to the end result is different. And they just need different things from me in order to get there. So that's how I would think about my management style.
Love that. Very understanding and meeting folks where they're at, as opposed to kind of coming in giving like a one size fits all approach. Jessica, what are your thoughts when it comes to leadership style?
Yeah, I tell my team, I am here to give you the tools and to remove the roadblocks. So I don't have time to do other people's work. So it's my strategy and my vision a lot of times. And I want to give people what they need to go ahead and make that happen, and remove any roadblocks that get in their way. I don't think, sometimes I have to take the fire for them, because I want to try to protect them, and I want them to, be able to, do their work and feel good. And so I'm always like, just pull me in if you need me. Like that's, but I want to give people autonomy, and I want people to feel good about the work that they're doing. And I want to just let them know I'm here, and something they need, I'm happy to give them the tools. But everyone has their own way of wanting to do things. So
yeah, and that I think is so interesting, because it kind of reflects on how you talked about before, right? Your experience with recognizing that folks work differently and kind of meeting them where they're at. I think both of you, it's so interesting, have a lot of overlap with how you approach your work and working with others. And although you are in two different functions in the business, it's so interesting that seems to be the thing that kind of ties everybody together from a cultural perspective. Well, thank you so much, both Jessica and Alyssa. We are at the top of the hour, for joining us today and for sharing such fantastic advice. I definitely took a bunch of notes about some of the incredible tidbits and insights that you all shared, and your experience. So thank you. And thank you everyone who tuned in for the discussion. As a reminder, we'll be sending out a recording of today's event along with resources to learn more about opportunities at TruGreen. And in the meantime, be sure to check out TruGreen's profile and Jobs on the Muse. We'd also love to hear your feedback to help us improve future events. So if you have a moment to spare, we'd love if you could head over to the Typeform tab on the right side of your screen to share your thoughts in a 1-minute survey. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.